This video is the second part of the series where we dive deep into the dust collection chronicles. In this episode we will be crafting the outer frame of the setup, repurposing an old barrel into a dust container, and adding a special twist with a unique closing mechanism. Good morning YouTube and welcome back to my channel.
Alright guys, first things first. I'm going to start by tracing the outline of an old plastic barrel which I got from my mother-in-law onto the 50mm plywood multiplex board which I bought from a local hardware store. For the final board I've chosen dimensions of approximately 75 by 75 centimeters, providing plenty of room to fit securely underneath in the middle. You probably can't see it, but the barrel isn't perfectly round. So I'm going to mark the center of the plywood board using a T-square. The traced outline is just a kind of point of reference anyway. Now to cut out the traced outline, I'll be using this handy circle router jig. If you're curious about how I put this jig together, I made a quick tutorial. You can find the link in the top right corner. And there you have it guys. Having carved out the circular groove, our plywood board is progressing nicely towards becoming the base of our closing mechanism. Stay tuned as we move on to the next step in this exciting build. Now with the circular groove routed out, it's time to cut some additional pieces to reinforce and shape the barrel enclosure. Using the circle router jig, I've cut out two semicircles from the remaining plywood board. These will serve as stabilization for the top outlet of the barrel. Next, I've drawn some more circle parts on the board to fill in the gaps. Now instead of precision cutting these with the bandsaw, I opted for a rough cut to save time. Initially I tried using a flush trim router bit to fit these circle parts to the semicircles. But unfortunately my router bits were too dull for a clean cut, so I went back to the bandsaw and decided to cut these parts more precisely. After some careful cutting on the bandsaw, I now have the circle parts ready to be assembled. Let's glue these parts together with the semicircles to create thicker semicircles. These reinforced semicircles will not only strengthen the top outlet of the barrel, but also help reshape it from an oval to a round form. With the wooden semicircles ready, it's time to attach them to the barrel. After securing them with clamps, I screwed them in place. And of course I used more than 2 screws, but the camera angle was too shitty to show it. Sadly, the barrel was still a bit too large for the groove, so I went back and made some adjustments with the router until it fits just right. After some tweaking, the barrel slid smoothly into place. Next I used a router jig to cut a smaller circle in the center of the plywood board. This hole will serve as the outlet for the cyclone. To make it easier to maneuver the barrel later on, I added some stoppers to the underside of the board. This will prevent the barrel from rolling around when I don't want it to. Next up, I attached 4 caster wheels to the bottom of the barrel to allow for easy movement around the workshop. To prevent any dust or air from leaking out, I sealed the holes and screws of the caster wheels with some white silicone. It's a bit wobbly and doesn't look particularly good, But we don't have to win a beauty contest here. Anyways, there you have it. The mighty barrel is now mobile and ready for action. To keep track of wood dust levels in the barrel, I decided to add a viewing window. Using a jigsaw, I cut a long rectangular hole into the side of the barrel. Next, I took a suitable piece of plexiglass and drilled holes along its edges. Then I transferred these holes onto the barrel and drilled corresponding holes there as well. Since the barrel has a slight curvature, I tried to bend the plexiglass by heating it with my Timo heat gun. Oh, by the way, I have a video about these Timo products. You can find the link in the top right corner. Anyway, unfortunately, the heat gun wasn't powerful enough for this task. I then tried using a regular hairdryer, which was slightly better, but still not strong enough. So I abandoned the idea of bending the plexiglass, because I don't have a more powerful heat gun. Instead, I choose to use just more silicone for sealing. Sadly, I only had white silicone at home, which doesn't look great, but I'm hoping it will do the job and keep everything sealed tight. After the silicone is set and dry, and if all goes well, I have a clear view of the wood dust levels inside the barrel. It may not look perfect, but hey, sometimes functionality trumps aesthetics. We will see how it holds up at the testing phase. For the outer frame of my dust collection system, I utilized some old beams I had lying around to build two sturdy frames, each standing at a towering 2 meters tall. By the way, building this DIY dust collection system has been quite the journey, and I've put in countless hours of work to bring you each step of the process. If you appreciate the effort and dedication that goes into creating content like this, consider subscribing to my channel. Your support means the world to me and helps me creating more awesome DIY projects for you to enjoy. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and become a part of my small growing community. Together we will continue to tackle exciting projects and inspire each other along the way. Thank you for your support. Now back to the project. After gluing and screwing the beams together, I marked the height of the plywood multiplex board, ensuring it was slightly taller than the barrel to allow for easy sliding underneath. Once I had the height figured out, I routed a groove into the beams and inserted the plywood board between them. To reinforce the structure, I added 2 more beams at the rear on the top and bottom. However, during this process I noticed that the stopper strips on the plywood board weren't deep enough to effectively stop the barrel in its final position, so I added extra stopper strips. For the locking mechanism I needed a vertical plate on both sides. So I took a 1 cm thick multiplex board and cut out 2 pieces. And then I reinforced the 2 pieces with slats on the back. To hold the boards on the beams, I carved out a 1 cm deep area on each beam. Then, using my router with the tape and superglue trick, I created 2 slots on each of these boards, which will be used as a kind of a rail or guide. You will see what I mean in a second. On a rectangular metal plate I welded 4 M10 bolts. These bolts had no threads near their heads. Plates also had drilled countersunk holes, so I easily could assemble a small multiplex board on the back. I pre-drilled using centering drills, which come in handy for cases like this. After shortening the bolts, I inserted the plate from the inside out into the slots. On the other side, I screwed on an identical metal plate. This one had a connecting nut in the center. And I promise the purpose of this connecting nut will soon become clear to you. Next, I drilled holes from the top to the bottom on both the left and the right side. These holes are for threaded rods, where are attached these 3D printed bevel gears. Initially, I faced a few challenges, getting both threaded rods with the gears in place properly.
2,000 years later.
Eventually, I had to flip the bracket upside down, and then it worked like a charm. On the other end of the second threaded rod, I screwed on a wooden handle for added convenience in operating the closing mechanism. To achieve an airtight seal between the barrel and the plywood board, I applied adhesive foam rubber inside and beside the groove on the board, as well as around the rim of the barrel. The initial test of the closure mechanism was quite successful. We will conduct a thorough check for airtightness later on. Lastly, I glued and screwed the cyclone onto the top of the plywood board. Next, we will focus on the motor connection with the automatic startup and overrun. Well, that wraps up another chapter in our dust collection chronicles. We've made significant progress today, building the outer frame of the dust collection and adding an easy to use and fast locking mechanism along the way. If you missed the first part of the series where we constructed the cyclone, be sure to check it out. Also, share your thoughts in the comments and leave a like.